Hello, grade 12s. Welcome back. It's Economics with Ms. Piwe. And today we are focusing on tourism and the impact of tourism on the economy. Now we are going to move on and look at the GDP, our gross domestic product. So we know that tourism has the biggest impact on the services industry. So it's more service orientated. So we know that in terms of service, they have a big impact. So let's have a look at the indirect contribution to start off this discussion. So tourism is a service-based industry. It is responsible for 65% of the GDP in developed economies and about 40% of the GDP in developing countries. So these are good statistics. Although ideally we would like to see ourselves above the 60% margin, but I think that is work in progress. You can see the significant contribution that it has on developed economies because those are very, very popular destinations. Think how many people visit Paris on an annual basis. Places like Rome to see where the Roman Church is based and where the Pope lives and so on. So for developed economies, they tend to benefit more in terms of the significance of the service-based industry towards the GDP. But 40% is off to a good start, and then we can also work ourselves to that level where we also could classify ourselves under that category. And then in terms of direct contribution, so tourism contributes around about 7.9% of the GDP in South Africa compared to the 12% that we often see worldwide. So here you can see the difference as well in terms of the contributions that actually happen in terms of the percentages that we see with direct contribution towards the GDP. We're getting there. I think it's work in progress, but we want to see ourselves around this bracket as well. That's just with regards to GDP. Just know the indirect and also the direct contributions towards the GDP. Poverty. We know that developing countries are still dealing with the issue of poverty. Poverty is still a huge challenge. It's still a huge socioeconomic issue that we are dealing with. So it's important to see that tourism actually plays an important role in order to lower the level of poverty in our country. So poverty is most evident in rural areas due to lack of job opportunities. So tourism can alleviate or ease poverty in the following ways. So let's have a look at those ways. So tourism is a fast and effective mechanism for distributing resources to rural areas and also to develop them as tourist sites. Okay, so there are areas that can be developed so that they also become what we call a tourist site. So there are opportunities in the rural communities because other people just want to be away from the city. They want to go into a quiet area and enjoy themselves there. So there's an opportunity to actually distribute resources to the rural areas in order to develop them so that they also become tourist sites. So many prime tourist attractions are located in the rural areas. Like I've said, people want to move away from their usual environment. So if you are more of an urban person, you just want to take a break from the city and actually go into a more quiet area so that you can pull your thoughts together. Okay, so that's another initiative that can be done. In terms of tourist development in the rural areas, we can increase the number of available jobs in areas where there aren't many jobs. So if there is a development taking place, remember when we spoke about the spillover effect in our previous lesson, that an area gets developed with hope that there will be a spillover to the neighboring areas as well. So we are hoping that jobs can then be created around other rural communities around the center of development. So tourism promotes a balanced and sustainable form of development. It means that people are able to earn a living in their home areas, resulting, just pull my screen up, there we are. So they are able to, so we here, so people are able to earn a living in their home areas, resulting in reduction of urbanization and also a more balanced population distribution. We know that people usually leave the rural communities to go to the urban areas because they are seeking employment opportunities. But if people can access the jobs, not all the people in the rural areas want to come and live in Johannesburg or in Cape Town or Durban or Pretoria. Some of them are actually quite content with the environment that they live in, but they are forced by the fact that there aren't any job opportunities available in those areas. Then they consider the movement or moving from the rural to the urban area because of employment opportunities. But if jobs can be made available in those areas, most of those people are quite happy to stay where they are. And then that also deals with the issue of having a more balanced population distribution, not having all South Africans living in urban areas because it becomes so congested. You look at areas like Johannesburg, the number of people that actually live in Johannesburg, and also in Durban and Cape Town and so on, because of the urbanization that has happened, because people come to the big cities with hope of getting jobs and a better life. And that's not always the case, because there are so many challenges as well in those urban areas. Okay, all right, so let's move on to our next discussion. And now we are going to look at the benefits of tourism. So we've been talking about tourism and its contribution to the GDP, dealing with the issue of employment, and also trying to ease the poverty in our society as well. So South Africa benefits from tourism through growth in the gross domestic product, which is our GDP, employment, and also infrastructure development actually happens. An additional benefit is that spending by foreign tourists results in an increase in the foreign exchange earnings. Okay, so that's quite a good one, which has a similar impact on the GDP to an increase in exports. Okay, so that's quite good, because when we attract foreign tourists to come into a country, especially the ones that come from countries where they have a strong currency, or the value of their currency is considered to be slightly higher than ours, that's good news, because then we are in a platform where we can exchange our currencies. So we know that the foreign exchange plays a very important role when we look at the balance of payments later on. But also the infrastructure gets developed based on the tourism sector and reasons as well. There are new hotels that get built. In Cape Town, we had that beautiful 7-star hotel that was built. And also with Gautrain developments that have been happening, new bridges, new roads, and so on, so that it makes it easier, and also it makes those areas more accessible in terms of tourists in our country. So let's move on. So those are some of the benefits of tourism, and I'm just going to go back to my point. There we are. So now we're looking at the household in terms of, how do they benefit from all of this. So households tourism, the screen is jumping up. Let's try again. There we are. So the household tourism benefits a household's prosperity or wealth in 3 ways. So more people earn salaries and wages. So we know that that's a good thing for households because now they have the power, they have the money to spend because they are generating an income. Therefore, they can participate in economic activity, but also they can purchase the consumer goods that they desire. So more people get an opportunity to earn a salary or a wage because of the additional job opportunities that have been created. Also in terms of infrastructure, so infrastructure is built for tourists, or infrastructure built for tourists is available both for tourists and local people to use. So you can't say that we built this bridge for the tourists and it's only the tourists that are going to use the bridge. It doesn't work like that. It's also going to benefit the local citizens of a country. Also, with the Gautrain, there was a hype that it'll be used during the World Cup, but also that infrastructure has helped us as locals to get to our destinations a lot quicker than sitting or getting stuck in traffic. And then moving right along in terms of skills, so a variety of skills is required in the tourism industry. So it's not just a set of specific skills, but there is a range of skills that is required in the tourism sector, just from the basic skills right up to the more sophisticated skills. So it does make it a lot easier for people to get employment opportunities in this particular industry because of the nature of skills that are required in the tourism industry. Right, then what about the businesses? So tourism has many benefits for businesses. Okay, so let's go back. There we are. So lots of benefits for businesses. The economic and basic services, or the basic infrastructure required for tourism, is provided by the public sector. So the public sector will provide the economic and basic services that are required for tourism. So hence there we see the public sector is playing an important role. And also tourism needs superstructure, which consists of businesses that provide accommodation and transport, built attractions, retailing, recreational services. So there's a lot of activity that is required in terms of tourism, because structures have to be built, accommodation has to be built, transport has to be made available, and also to build all these beautiful attractions requires work from businesses as well. So businesses do benefit because they will be in a position to provide and build these superstructures that are required. So superstructure is normally supplied by the private sector, and the building and running of the superstructure makes them a good profit. So we've seen the shopping malls that are being built. They're very unique in design because they're trying to attract more tourists to go there and do some shopping. There's more space, there's more movement, and the food quarters have been developed. They've become more sophisticated for people to lunch. If they want to sit outside, and they have that facility to do that. So the private sector is mainly responsible for the development of the superstructures in the tourism sector. Both public and private sector partnerships, we call them the triple Ps, are used to develop the tourist destinations. So there is joint there's joint efforts between the public and the private sector when it comes to developing the tourism infrastructure, or the tourist destinations, and also being involved in developing the superstructures. So the public and the private sectors are very involved in those offerings. Okay, so it's time to sum up our lesson. So we've learned quite a bit around tourism and the tourism industry in this lesson. Very interesting section. And when you are asked an essay question in this particular topic, you've got such great room to write about all different things that pertain to tourism. But the main idea is that you should understand what tourism is all about, because if you understand it, and also the different divisions of it, that will help you to respond to these questions. So we've looked at tourism in this lesson, and then we said it can be divided as activities of people traveling. So it does involve some traveling of some sort to places outside their usual environment. So you can't be in your usual environment. You can't say you've traveled from the gate of your house or to the main part of the house. You can't say you're a tourist because the kilometers that are involved there is about 160 kilometers. And also you have to spend at least a minimum of 1 night and a maximum of 1 year in order for you to be considered a tourist. So you are outside your usual area, we've mentioned that, or less than 1 year for business, so you can travel for business to go to conferences and so on. You can travel for leisure just to relax and get some time out, and also with other purposes that include studying and so on without any remuneration. So you can't earn an income and still consider yourself as a tourist. So there should be no remuneration involved in that process. So it's important to be aware of that point. So tourism is actually quite a good thing, and I encourage you as young people, once you've completed your studies, you've worked, you've saved some money, travel, go see the world and get that experience. Well, from me, Uspiwe, it's a wrap of today's lesson. I trust that you've enjoyed and you've also learned so much from this lesson. Ngithini ngithanda nonke emakhaya.